going to be looking at some conversions involving imperial measurements. So for those of you who have your workbooks, you'll see there is a table with a bunch of different imperial measurements. So things like there's 12 inches in a foot and 3 feet in 1 yard, and there's 5,280 feet in a mile, or what is it? I think it's 1,760 yards in a mile. Really, they don't make sense, and because you didn't grow up in that system, you probably really only know 12 inches in a foot. Okay, so use that for your reference, and then we'll do some of these conversions. So if I wanted to take 5 feet 8 inches and just change it into inches, these are a little bit different than what we've done before. So I have to take the 5 feet and I need to get it into inches. So I know that in 1 foot, I'm just using my unit analysis here, I have 12 inches. So my feet are going to cancel out. But I had 8 extra inches that weren't included in my 5 feet. So I got to add those 8 inches in. Okay, so the feet cancel. 5 times 12 divided by 1 is 60. So I get 60 inches plus 8 inches, which is a total of 68 inches. Okay, I could do the same thing over here with the miles and feet. So I've got 1 mile and 725 feet. If I want to change that to be just feet, so I know that 1 mile is the same thing as 1 mile is the same as 5,280 feet, plus I had those 725 feet that were already there. So that gives me 5,280 feet plus the 725 feet, and in total that gives me 6,005 feet altogether. Okay, now if I'm going from feet into yards and feet, that would be something like, well, I got 49 feet, and I'm going to change that into yards, which is the bigger measurement, right? So I've got 3 feet goes in the bottom and 1 yard up top. So this gives me now, my feet would cancel, so I get 49 over 3 yards. Okay, now this doesn't work out nicely, but 3 I know goes into 49 16 times, so I end up with 16 and 1/3 of a yard. So instead of writing 1/3 of a yard, it really means that I got 16 yards entirely or fully, and then I was 1/3 of the way to getting my next one. Well, since 3 feet make up a yard, that one piece that's remaining is my leftover feet. So I took 48 feet and changed it into 16 yards, and I had 1 foot left over, right? So if you were doing your long division, you take your whole number portion, and then instead of going into decimals, you take the remainder, okay? So let's change something like 125 inches into yards and feet and inches. So there's 2 different ways you could do this. I would just start off by saying, well, I got 125 inches. I'm going to change that into feet. So I know 1 foot has 12 inches. And so my inches cancel, and I get 125 over 12 feet. Okay? And I know that's the same thing as, well, 10 can go into that, or 12 can go into 125 tenfold times, and I get 10 and 5/12 of a foot, which really means I have 10 feet and then also 5 inches left over. But I have more than 3 feet, so I can change those 10 feet into yards. Now, hopefully you don't need to write out this conversion. It should be easy enough to know that that gives you 3 full yards and 1 foot left over. Okay, so now I get 3 yards, 1 foot, and then I still had my 5 inches from before. Okay, so working with imperial measurements is sometimes very beneficial, especially when we're looking at things like construction. Everything on blueprints and stuff is still given in imperial, but when we're looking at some of these conversions, because they're not base 10, they really just don't make a lot of sense. Oh, I keep hitting the wrong button here. All right, so what about going from metric to imperial and imperial to metric? Okay, so I'm going to use my unit analysis to find out how many meters are in 1 foot. Okay, So you're going to have a few different conversions that you're going to see. The one important one that you need, the only one that you need, is the centimeters to inches conversion. That is your bridge between metric and imperial. So if I want to change feet into meters, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of my feet and I'm going to change it into inches. So I know there's 12 inches in 1 foot. Okay. The most important conversion now that I got to get rid of the inches. So I'm going to put inches down here, and I've got 1 inch. And the one I want you to remember is that 2.54 centimeters is equal to 1 inch. If you can remember that one, you can go between anything in imperial and metric. That's the only thing you need. That's your bridge in between. Unit analysis takes care of everything else. Okay. All right. So I want to get centimeters now into meters. Well, I know there's 100 centimeters in 1 meter. So when I look at all my different units here, my feet cancel, my inches cancel, my centimeters cancel, and the only unit I'm left with now is meters. So I'm going to take my 1 foot and it changes into meters. So up top in your numerator, you would go 1 times 12 times 2.54. In the denominator, it's 1 times 1 times 100. So whatever our answer we get, we're going to divide by 100. And that gives us 0.3048 meters. Okay, so 1 foot is the same thing as 0.3048 meters. Now, if you want to, you can go ahead and remember those conversions so you can kind of cheat later on. But I find trying to commit those to memory is too difficult. I just remember this one right here. That's the only thing I ever remember. And I just use that to convert back and forth. Even though it makes for longer operations, generally they also tend to be more accurate because I'm not using another rounded conversion. So what about if I wanted to take 25 miles and change it into kilometers? So I've got my 25 miles here. So I'm going to get miles. I'm going to change that down to feet. So I know 1 mile is the same thing as 5,280 feet. And then I'm going to change my feet into inches, and I know 1 foot is 12 inches. And then I'm going to change my inches into centimeters. So 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. And then I got to change my centimeters into kilometers. So I know that there's 100 centimeters in a meter. And then I also know there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. Okay. So all that was just simple conversions. I know all of those ones. They're nice and simple, and I just write them all out, make sure that my units are in opposite locations so that they cancel one another, and the only unit I'm going to be left with is kilometers. Okay? And then you're just going to multiply all the numerators, multiply all the denominators, and then take the top and divide by the bottom. So that ends up, when you do this in your calculator, you're going to get 40.2336 kilometers. So 25 miles is equal to 40.2336 kilometers. Okay. Now we can use, I'm going to go back to that speed of light. Okay. Speed of light, approximately we said 300 million meters per second. Well, how many miles is light traveling in, let's say, a minute? Okay. So again, I'm going to start out with my 300 million. 1, 2, 3. And we got meters. And then I've got my seconds down here. So let's start off. I'm going to say there's 60 seconds in a minute. Okay. So I've changed my seconds into minutes. But now I got to go from meters into miles. So meters, I know 1 meter is 100 centimeters. And then I know that 2.54 centimeters is 1 inch. And then I know 12 inches is 1 foot. And then finally I know that 5,280 feet is 1 mile. So I just use really quick conversions that I know, set them all up so my units are going to cancel. Seconds cancel seconds, meters and meters, centimeters and centimeters, inches and inches, feet and feet. And I'm left with miles up top, minutes in the denominator. Great. Okay, so if you were to go through and do this multiplication, the numerator would give you something nice. It gives you 1.8 times 10 to the exponent of 12 miles. And then the denominator, not as nice of a value. So we get 160,934.4 minutes. So I know this one's not going to work out very nicely. So let's just round. And we're going to get 11,184,481 miles per minute, approximately. Okay, so I didn't need to know any difficult conversions. I just pick the simple ones I know and make sure that my units are canceling out. Okay, so there's a chart in your workbook that gives you a whole bunch of different ones and it asks you to fill them all in. You really don't need that whole chart. You don't need to memorize it. This is the important one to know. It helps to know how many feet are in a mile. You don't really need yards at all, other than you need to know there's 3 feet in 1 yard. You would need that. Now, the caveat with all of these conversions is it's wonderful for us to be able to use unit analysis and do it by hand, but we also have Google. And I know that when all else is lost, if I type in the unit I want in Google and then how many I have of the unit that I know, it does the conversion for me. So yes, it's wonderful for us to be able to do this by hand, but if you're stuck, Google will be your best friend. All right, guys, have a good week.